Welcome to Susquehanna Legal Services Landlord-Tenant Video. I'm Pete Mackey, an attorney with Susquehanna Legal Services, and I'm joined today for a panel discussion with Nancy Gippert, who's a housing attorney with the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, and Gary Wamser, an attorney with SLS. In this video, we will look at very practical things a tenant should do in deciding whether or not to rent an apartment. Since the video will also be seen by landlords, we have information which should be useful to them also. After we watch a short vignette describing or showing a tenant looking at an apartment and discussing it with the landlord, we will return for a brief panel discussion about some of the key issues in this important area.
Hello, is this Mr. Jones? I'm interested in the apartment you advertised in the Daily Item. My name is Joy McLean. Yes, I will. Can I come over and look at it? I have 2 children and a pet fish. Yeah. No dogs or cats. In about 20 minutes. Okay, great. Bye. Hi, I'm Jordan McLean. I'm here to look at the apartment.
Hi, I'm Rupert Jones. Come on in.
You're asking for $325 a month?
Yeah, that's right, plus $325 security deposit.
Okay. And what utilities do I pay?
I'll be paying the water, sewer, and trash collection, and tenants are responsible for electric, oil, heat, and cable and phone bill.
Okay. How much does the oil heat run in the winter?
Last winter it ran about $100 a month.
$100 a month?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good. May I look at the kitchen?
Sure, come on, it's this way.
Okay.
Here's the kitchen.
Okay. Are you going to supply the refrigerator?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And this works?
Yes, it does.
I see there's no burner right there on the stove. Are you going to
Yeah, I plan on
replace that?
replacing that, yeah.
Okay. Okay, let me check the water. You mind if I take notes down?
No, not at all. Go ahead.
So you're going to supply the burner, right?
Yes.
And the refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
And I see there's a dryer hookup over there. Does it have a wash machine also hook up?
Yes, it does.
Oh, okay. Good.
This is the family room.
Okay. Do the curtains come with the place?
They stay.
They
yes.
stay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I noticed some stains here on the rug. How old is the rug?
I bought the place 9 years ago, but I replaced the carpet 4 years ago. And the tenants that just moved out, they cleaned the carpet, but these stains are like permanent, but you won't be responsible when you move out.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Would you like to see the rest of the apartment now?
Yes, please.
This is one of the 3 bedrooms.
Okay.
I took that door off so I could repaint it.
Wow. I noticed there's no pole there to hang my clothes on. You're going to...
No, I'm going to put that back up.
Okay, good. In the bathroom, does it have a tub or just
Yeah,
a
sure,
shower?
it's down this way. Let me show you.
Okay. Oh, okay, that was nice. Is the plumbing in good working
condition? Yeah, I've never
condition?
had any problems with the plumbing.
Oh, okay. Well, it looks like there's enough room for me and my kids, and you require a lease?
Yeah, I require all my tenants to sign a 1-year lease. There's a copy of it downstairs if you'd like to take a look at it.
Okay, great.
Here's a copy of the lease.
Oh, okay. It's 1 year, right?
That's right.
I don't understand a lot of this legal stuff. Can I keep a hold of this for a couple of days?
Sure.
Okay, good. Good.
Do you have any references?
Yes, I can give you the name of my present employer and my current landlord. I'll
That'd
write
be
that
great.
down.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
If I can contact them today, I'll give you a call tonight.
Oh, good. Good.
All right, thanks for coming by.
Okay, it was nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you too.
Okay.
Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Well, panel, now that we've seen the little clip about a tenant looking at an apartment, we have some interesting topics to discuss. And my first question for Nancy, who's with the Human Relations Commission, is what is it permissible for a landlord to put in a newspaper ad when he or she is advertising an apartment?
Okay, first of all, what the law says is that it is unlawful to print, publish, or circulate any limitation, specification, or discrimination based upon race, sex, handicap, disability, age, presence of children in your ad for your apartment. What that means is you should be targeting the type of building you're renting. You shouldn't be targeting people, is what I mean. You can't, for example, say perfect for older couple, perfect for empty nesters.
But don't we see these ads all the time?
We see them less and less because they're unlawful.
Okay.
You can't say woman preferred. You can't say, I think people are aware, you can't say white people preferred. But the other protected classes, it's exactly the same. You can't specify that you want couples without children. You can't specify that you want one person, because under the provisions of the Act that do not allow discrimination on the basis of the children, you have to allow a family of, say, 4 to rent a 2-bedroom apartment. Now, you don't have to allow 10 people in your 2-bedroom apartment. You're allowed to have reasonable occupancy standards.
Well, in this tape, I noticed that he apparently asked her over the phone how many children she had. Would that have been okay?
That is unlawful. He really should have asked her how many people would be in the apartment. Mm-hmm. If I recall, it was a 2-bedroom apartment, so the rule of thumb is he's probably going to have to allow 4 people to rent the apartment, be it 3 kids and 1 adult, 2 kids and 2 adults. There might be some variations if it was a tiny, tiny 2-bedroom or a huge 2-bedroom, but those are issues that cannot be placed in the ad. For example, you couldn't say 2-bedroom apartment, 1 child allowed. That would be unlawful.
I suspect that a lot of landlords are very surprised when they are contacted by the Human Relations Commission, and a lot of people don't realize that these things are illegal.
Well, when the law first went into effect, which was approximately 6 years ago, it came as a big surprise in Pennsylvania. A lot of other states had already had laws prohibiting discrimination based on familial status, which means presence of children in the family. But Pennsylvania had not. So this was a whole new area, and we just had floods and floods of complaints. I'm happy to report that, at least in the larger areas of the state, the landlords are becoming more familiar with these provisions of the law, and they're also cleaning up their ads.
Now, I know one question the landlord asked, I think is permissible, and that is, do you have any pets?
Absolutely. The only time, if, for example, you're a person with a disability and you have a support animal, the landlord has to make an exception for that animal and allow you to have that animal in your apartment with you. That's not considered a pet. It's considered more of a support animal.
So we can discriminate based on species then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Gary, the heart of the video, of course, of the little scene that we saw, deals with the tenant going through the apartment and examining it. What are some of the practical things that you think that a tenant should do when looking?
I thought the video was good for this. I think it's important to establish a good working relationship with the landlord early on, and I think she did that. I noticed, for example, that she went around taking notes to make sure she had information and solid and could have a record of it. She checked a complete sense of the cost. I think it was important, for example, for her to get a sense of who was paying what costs, heating, water bills, that sort of thing. And when she was responsible for the heating, to have a sense of how much it actually cost to heat the apartment. I think she could have gone in a little greater detail on that personally, on what type of heat, how much of the cost, whether there were any problems. For example, a lot of apartments have leaks or things like that that are not really evident and wouldn't be evident from the very cursory look that she did. Although I thought she did a good job, for example, in seeing that there were cracks in the floor and pointing that out, again, saying it up front with the landlord, noticing that the fire extinguisher had expired, for example. Another thing she did very well when she noted those was also try and talk very upfront about who is responsible for those things. Would the oven be cleaned? Would the fire extinguisher be brought up to date, and who is responsible to do that and when? Again, a good working relationship where those things are discussed up front and worked out ahead of time is the best way to do it. It helps down the line if these problems continue to arise.
Nancy, when she looked at the lease, she said something which I've heard many, many times before from my clients, and that is, I don't understand all this legal stuff. And it appeared to be a form printed lease, and I have to confess that I don't understand a lot of the legal stuff in a form printed lease. What is the status of such leases now in Pennsylvania?
Well, in 1994, the Pennsylvania legislature passed the Plain Language Contract Act, which would help her a little anyway.
It does apply to leases, doesn't it?
Yes.
My understanding of the law, and it is a new law, and most landlords and tenants don't know about it, but what the law requires is that contracts such as leases must be written in understandable language. They must avoid very, very small print. They must avoid legalese or terms which are not understandable to the general public. And there are penalties for contracts for the authors of contracts which violate those provisions. So it's something that will become more and more part of our everyday lives as we see these contracts written in plainer English. It doesn't mean that a landlord can't insist on the same terms. The landlord must, however, describe them more accurately and more understandably.
Yeah, and one of the problems, Pete, is that tenants often have very little bargaining power when it comes to leases that's on a take-it-or-leave-it basis. There's a legal term for that, a contract of adhesion, and they can be illegal. Often a landlord will have a form-written lease which includes a lot of onerous provisions, may waive a lot of tenants' rights. It's not always clear to me that a tenant does better by having a written lease than going without a lease.
There are advantages to a written lease, disadvantages. Certainly one of the advantages is that it locks in the amount of rent due on a monthly basis for a set period of time. One of the disadvantages is, as you pointed out, is that it often has a lot of provisions in it which are adverse to the tenant. And you're also right, I think, about the bargaining position. The housing stock is limited, and it's especially limited for low-income people. There simply aren't many apartments around, and it's sometimes like a game of musical chairs where if a tenant has to get out of one place, there are only so many units available, and when the music stops, somebody may be left out in the street.
Yeah.
So they may not have a lot of options, but they should know that just because they're handed a lease doesn't mean that they have to sign it as it stands. And they also certainly should know that they can ask questions about it. What does it mean?
Probably the best advantage, and I guess it was evident in this tape, was that it was a year's lease. And so if it's a place that she definitely wants to move to with her children and live there for a while, having a guarantee of staying there for a year, unless she breaks the lease, is very valuable. And that's probably one of the best reasons to sign a lease.
And I think perhaps the most important reason to inspect the apartment thoroughly and to find out about all the costs, hidden and otherwise, as you discussed, one of the most important reasons for that is that we want tenants not to have unreasonable expectations. If they move into an apartment and know that they can afford the rent, but don't realize the heating costs during the winter, they're going to fall behind in either their rent, their utilities, or some other bills, and they're going to get in trouble. So they have to know before moving in exactly how much this is going to cost them and whether they can afford it. Nancy, at the end of the tape, the tenant asked the landlord if the place was available. He said that it was, and she wanted to look at the lease, and he was going to check out her references. Can a landlord ask tenant for references?
Oh, absolutely. The important thing under the Human Relations Act is that all prospective tenants are treated the same, regardless of race, sex, religion, et cetera, et cetera. I do want to run through the whole laundry list of protected classes at some point so people know what the basis of protection are. But under our law anyway, and I think under all the laws of the Commonwealth, the landlord has the right to determine if you can afford his or her apartment, and if you've been a good tenant in the past. He had also asked her for other references, and she had given them to him. However, what he cannot do is discriminate against her on the basis of, and let me read this list here, race, color, familial status, age, religious creed, ancestry, sex, national origin, handicap or disability, or because of the handicap or disability of someone you are known to have a relationship with, or because you use a support animal.
Okay.
So on any of those bases, he cannot discriminate against you. And as I said, it's a comparative test. If you're the only person he asked for references from, then he's discriminated against you.
Can a landlord simply not rent an apartment to someone because he doesn't think that that tenant will be a suitable tenant?
Well, he can, as long as it's not based on one of those protected classes I've mentioned.
Right.
And if someone files a complaint, he's going to be, or she is going to be, in an awkward position to try and defend that. But of course, the burden's on the person bringing the case, so it makes it difficult also to prove it. But depending upon the circumstances, if that in fact he just had this bad feeling about that person, on the face of it, that's okay. But it's not a very good business reason, I don't think, for a landlord to be turning people down.
Let Gary and me pepper you with some circumstances then.
Okay.
Someone has a criminal record. Can that be the basis for turning the person down?
As long as you turn people down consistently who have a record, and you don't just, for example, turn down Latino prospective tenants.
So the key is that they have to be consistent.
Exactly.
How about if someone's on welfare?
On the face of it, that's okay. However, in many areas, that would create a situation where you would be having a serious disparate impact on one group of people based on race. A lot of areas that might not be true. So you might be able to make a case against the landlord who was denying people based on source of income. There are cities where that's unlawful. Harrisburg, Philadelphia, but under the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act, source of income is not a protected class. And if the family has enough income to afford the apartment, I think you're kind of crazy to turn them down for that reason, because it's a steady source of income. But
at least for the time being.
Yes.
How about bad credit history?
Yes, you can turn someone down.
As long as you do it
consistently, yes.
How about someone who is in a wheelchair and the apartment's on the second floor and there's no elevator? I'm giving you hard ones now.
Yes, you
That
are.
was a hard one, yeah.
Yes, you are.
Most landlords would think that's an easy one, though. Why is that hard?
Well, there may, the individual who's seeking to rent the apartment may want to seek a reasonable accommodation, and there may be a way to work out a physical accommodation for that person to be able to get to the second floor.
But the tenant has to do it.
If there needs to be a physical modification,
Yes.
and the tenant offers to make that modification themselves, then the landlord, unless there is a really good reason for denying it, has to allow them to do that. Now, in most instances, the landlord isn't going to have to pay to make that physical modification themselves, but the tenant has to be allowed to make that modification. It's usually more subtle and trickier than that. That one's going to be kind of tough.
Okay.
But if it's a new building, there probably should be a method of accessibility available, but in older buildings, there generally aren't.
Okay. Gary, before we leave our panel discussion, could you say a couple words about legal services and who's eligible for legal services and what kinds of cases we handle?
Well, generally, Susquehanna Legal Services is one of a number of programs with offices statewide. We handle civil legal problems, almost anything but criminal, and that, of course, includes a great deal in the housing area, whether it's housing conditions, discrimination, or eviction. And so those are the types of things we would handle for low-income clients. Eligibility is set on income guidelines handed down by the federal government.
Okay. And at the end of the tape, there'll be a phone number and address for the offices of Susquehanna Legal Services. I want to thank our panel members very much for participating, and I hope that the viewers learn a lot, and happy apartment hunting. Thank you.